Colorado Buffaloes have made a quarterback change again. Will they stick with it? Will it work? How do we feel about it? Let's talk about it on today's episode of Locked On Buffs.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I'm your host, Kevin Borba. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the app today. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So thank you for making me your first listen of the day. Colorado makes a quarterback change. Again, will it work? They don't really know what their identity is, and I'm not really sure if Colorado agrees within the coaching staff of the importance of finding one. And then they have a big recruit visiting this weekend. They're also in the mix for a transfer portal player already. So we're going to talk all those things. But first, let's talk about the quarterback change. Started with Kaidon Salter, first two games, went to Ryan Staub this past week against Houston. Ryan Staub, he was a great story. Everyone liked him, fan favorite. Didn't work out, right? Just the offense took multiple steps back. It seems like the playbook was limited with him at quarterback. So now they turn back to Kaidon Salter. Now, this has been the move that I had been calling for. I personally thought that Kaidon Salter got moved on way too quick. I think they moved on from him way too quickly, right? He's a veteran quarterback, multi-year starter who led his team to a 13-1 record, 12-1 record in 2023. Conference USA MVP, probably one of the best dual threats in the country. He has sort of like Heisman ceiling if everything goes right, which everything has not gone right. So I don't think we'll see that. But I think Colorado and Deion Sanders gave up on him way too soon. And I think they got a little gun shy, a little rattled about the week one performance against Georgia Tech. And all of a sudden they got desperate. And when a team gets desperate, they're not always thinking with their heads. They're more so thinking with their hearts, where it's like, hey, is it time to switch things up? And it was definitely not time to switch things up. And I don't know if basing a quarterback decision off a win against Delaware was the right move. And that's sort of what happened is Ryan Staub used the most of his opportunity against Delaware and ended up getting the start. But Kaidon Salter is a guy who he changes the dynamic of this offense. Now, I don't think we've seen him change the dynamic of this offense that much because I don't really necessarily know if Pat Shurmur is using him correctly, right? I don't feel like Colorado is designing plays that suit his strengths. I also think Kaidon Salter was still trying to build a rapport with his receivers, and a full game against Delaware probably would have done that. And who knows, right? You could always play the what if game, but had Colorado just rode with him against Delaware, they probably win. And then they probably put up a better fight against Houston, right? And it's nothing against Ryan Staub. I think Ryan Staub had some great moments. And while I never thought they should have gone away from Kaidon Salter, I understood why they had to. Right? Because when you play three quarterbacks and you're giving off the impression that, hey, we're going to play the best guy, best man wins, best whatever. It's like, okay, well, he was the best guy. So now he has to play, right? Because that technically he was the best guy against Delaware. I just think they put a lot of weight into a game that was Delaware's first game versus an FBS opponent. And so with Kaidon Salter, I expect the offense to sort of be a little bit more dynamic, right? I don't feel like with Ryan Staub at quarterback, the playbook was all the way open, right? With Kaidon Salter, which this is surprising because I don't really love the looks that we're always getting with Pat Shurmur calling the plays. With Kaidon Salter at the helm, I do think that Colorado's playbook opens a little bit more, right? I think Ryan Staub, they were limited about, let's say your playbook is 100 pages. With Ryan Staub, sorry, there's a mosquito. With Ryan Staub, I would say that the playbook was at like 25 to 50 pages. With Kaidon Salter, it's at 75 to 80, right? I don't know if it's a full-blown playbook open, but it's pretty close. And I think Pat Shurmur and the staff, I think that there's something with Kaidon Salter where it's just like they expected him to be great right away and it didn't happen. So they got like a little rattled. And it's like, okay, he has for him, he's playing with a whole new team, but Colorado in general, 4 new offensive linemen. You have new running backs, Simeon Price to Kalen Taylor, and a brand new wide receiver core, new tight end, right? Pretty much this entire offense outside of Jordan Seaton is different. And even Omarion and Draylon Miller weren't starters last year, or at least full-time starters. So you have a brand new roster. And when things get a little tough, you panic. You hit the panic button at quarterback, right? I think the The Georgia Tech game was a tough one to open with because Georgia Tech is good, right? They're ranked number 18th in the country. They just beat Clemson off a last second field goal, but I think Georgia Tech looked like the better team. And I think Colorado sort of just saw that result to the Georgia Tech game and went, well, we have to make a dramatic move. And I don't think there was a need for a dramatic move. So with this quarterback change, you have to stick with it. There is no longer this like, okay, next week against BYU or TCU, whoever they play, I forget. I think it's BYU. You have to, let's try Juju or let's go back to Staub, right? You have to sort of ride with this decision. And I think that makes it easier for the team, right? When the team doesn't know who they're playing for, doesn't know who's at quarterback, right? They play BYU next week, correct? Just had to double fact check myself there. When the team doesn't know what's going to happen and the coaches don't know what's going to happen, it creates division, right? And I think they created a little bit of division with that whole Delaware stunt because all of a sudden it was like, okay, Ryan Staub led us to a couple touchdowns. Now the offense, everyone was hyped for him. Now the offensive players are all like, well, we don't know if we trust Staub anymore or Salter anymore. Like you create a division within your own locker room. And so I think you ride with Salter until the wheels fall off. Unless Salter is just absolutely terrible, which I doubt will happen because I think he's been pretty decent when he's played. I think you just ride with him, right? And you go back to that plan of like Kaidon Salter for this season, Julian Lewis, and now I guess Ryan Staub could battle it out next season. But I think all of this changing is going to be hard. I think Colorado's one of the main reasons they don't have an identity, which we'll get to in a little bit. The concept of the identity is because they don't know who the quarterback is, right? So the offense kind of changes, even though the other coaches from other teams are saying it doesn't change in terms of play calling, it changes in terms of like what the players are expecting, right? Because Kaidon Salter plays differently than Ryan Staub, or Ryan Staub, he runs more or less, whatever. Like there's differences in each quarterback, and the players have to get used to how this guy throws, what this guy likes to do when there's a scramble drill, whatever it is, right? So it does create a little bit of confusion, and I think finding your quarterback will help you find your identity. I think it'll help Colorado find some momentum, and I think it will help get Colorado on track because this next stretch after Wyoming is going to be the toughest stretch of Colorado's schedule. They have the potential to play 5 ranked teams. They also have the potential to go 0-5 in their next 5 games after Wyoming, right? And that's not a position you want to be in. So they need to figure something out quickly. Otherwise, this could be a very long season. And I think staying true to your quarterback situation or your quarterback decision is the best way to sort of solve other problems along the way. When we come back, we're going to talk about the confusion being said by Deion Sanders and Titans coach Brett Bartolone when it comes to finding an identity. This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at DoorDash. Now, everyone likes some DoorDash, so it's almost the weekend. So it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash streaks, saving more time every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For Colorado, my player is Tafiq Bayard. Breakout game for him, I think. He was a guy that I expected to be an instant starter, got banged up, but he had a couple big tackles. He was also getting guys in the right position defensively when it comes to alignment. So when the pressure was on, we could count on Bayard. Coach Prime gave him a shout out this past week, so love to see that. And just like Tafiq Bayard delivered for the Buffs, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash streaks, you save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. This episode of Locked on Buffs is also brought to you by our sponsors over at FanDuel. The football season is here. The NFL season is here, which means you need to hop on over to FanDuel because they're making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So it makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye out on your fantasy lineup, which is always stressful, as we all know. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Welcome back to Locked on Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Become a Locked on Buffs insider. Myself and former Colorado player Jordan Dominic do a weekly film breakdown. The Houston one just dropped. The link is below. Sign up. The first 2 weeks are free. Jordan provides a great insight, sort of provides a look into the mind of Coach Prime and what he's asking for from his players. Speaking of Coach Prime's mind, I don't think it's on the same page as the mind of one Mr. Brett Bartolone. And so yesterday, Brett Bartolone, tight ends coach, former wide receiver coach, talked about the importance of identity. And this is what he said, quote, "We have to find our identity as an offense. Us coaches have to find that. We have to get that out of the players." And it's like, okay, that's interesting. It kind of sounded like it contradicted what Coach Prime had to say. And he also said this: "We've got to solidify the quarterback position and make sure he's comfortable and do things that maximize his skill sets. Once we find that, I feel like we are on track in doing that. Then we're going to be in a much better place." If you guys remember correctly, Coach Prime basically said he values winning more than an identity. And he said the identity will work itself out, where it sounds like Coach B is like, you know what, we got to find that identity to get those wins. And all I think this means is I think that there's sort of a little bit of disagreement in the Colorado locker room, right, with coaches. And I don't think it was meant to be taken as like he's taking a shot at Coach Prime. I just think that there's fundamental different ways to look at football. And sometimes I think Coach Prime has a unique way that not everyone agrees with. I remember one of the first things he said that really caught a lot of people off guard was in his first year, he was like, "Yeah, I don't care if they like each other. I don't care if there's team chemistry. I played on a team where the quarterback hated the receiver or vice versa, and we won games." And so I think Coach Prime he values winning, but I think there's moments where it's like, I don't know if he's valuing all of the things that go into getting your team in a position to win, right? Saying you'll figure out your identity as you go, to me, is not. I feel like in Brett Bartolone's case, the identity will help the team win. Whereas Coach Prime is saying, you know what, if we win, we'll figure out our identity just sort of on the fly. And I think you have to have an understanding of what it is, right? You have to have a consistent thing that you're preaching. And I also think Brett Bartolone is pretty much saying like, hey, until we figure out the quarterback situation, it doesn't matter. And I think that's the obvious thing. I do think that whether people want to admit it or not, by him speaking to the media, which they have position coaches speak to the media all the time, so I don't want to read too much into it, but to me, he's sort of the next step to call plays, right? I think there's just too much going on with Byron Leftwich's life and Byron Leftwich's life. I don't really know what his role is, and I don't even know if he's with the team anymore. That being said, I do think Coach Bartolone is like the next guy up to call plays, right? So I think this is sort of a prove it week for Pat Shurmur. I think there's a reason that Deion Sanders had him talk to the media. I think there's a reason that Deion Sanders put him out there because I think people know what could be at stake here, what is possibly next. And Deion Sanders will make a change. We've seen it before. He's now changed his mind on quarterbacks 3 times. He went Kaidon Salter over Juju, Kaidon Salter again, and then Ryan Staub over Kaidon Salter. So it's like he's flipping things. He will flip things. He will pull the plug on an offensive coordinator, right? He did it with Sean Lewis his first year. He didn't fire Charles Kelly, but I think it was a mutual sort of thing to go separate ways. And then at Jackson State, I think he was cycling through offensive coordinators every year, right? So if the offense isn't clicking how Coach Prime wants it to, he will make a change. And I think Coach Bartolone is sort of that next guy up. And I think when it comes to identity, the hard part is it's like identity is important in the sense of you have to know you have to know what you're looking for as a player and a coach, right? The coaches himself says we want to know what our identity is so we could ask the players to do it. And it's like, what does that mean though? Like why can't you ask the players to just do this? And it's like I think there's general confusion in the Colorado locker room is what I'm hearing. Just based on what's being said. And it's not that there's like anarchy or like he's like trying to contradict Coach Prime. I think he's just saying like, hey, we are not in a position right now where everyone is on the same page. And that's what leads to a blowout loss to Houston. That's what leads to sort of this quarterback chaos. That's what leads to saying we're going to run the ball and then not running the ball, right? I think this Colorado team is behind, honestly, right? You're trying to figure things out that you likely would have hoped to have had at least a direction with before the season. Like by the time fall camp ends, you go, okay, we like to do this, this, and this with this guy. Right now, it still feels like Colorado is figuring that out. And the problem is you're about to be a month into the season, and your Big 12 slate is probably one of the hardest in the you probably have one of the most difficult schedules in the conference or in the country as well, honestly. I know the ESPN FPI leans towards the SEC, but if you look at Colorado's next games after Wyoming, it's BYU, who's undefeated and probably going to be ranked. I think they're that good. I think BYU, who's BYU have this week? East Carolina. I think that'll be a nice test for them. But BYU has only allowed 3 points this season, right? They blew out Portland State and they blew out Stanford, both of which are not that good. But East Carolina is a decent team, so that'll be a good test for them. And then they have TCU, who TCU is, I think, a revelation this year. I think Sonny Dykes found his groove back. I think he's going to save his job. I don't know if his job was in danger, but it was definitely trending in that direction. And then you have number 12 Iowa State, number 16 Utah, and both those teams are really good. Defensively, offensively, they know what they're doing, and so it's just you're behind the 8 ball, and you're about to get into the most difficult stretch of the season. And I think you're asking right now to find your identity on the fly. I think you're asking your team to make lemonade out of rocks. And it's like that doesn't make sense, right? Because it's not a thing, right? It's give them the lemons so they can make the lemonade, right? Give them a clear path, give them the identity, find what you want to do and stick with it. I think Colorado likes to change things too much rather than just being like, hey, we're going to try this again. We're going to learn from our mistakes from this week and try to modify it next week. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of this sort of confusion. When we come back, the Buffs are in on a new transfer and they're in on a 4-star recruit. I'm going to talk about both of them, but first, quick break. This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move, right? We all like to move around, right? Mazda delivers great footwork, the breath work, all the sweats, all the athletes put in, all the details. Mazda brings the same intention on how they craft every model. You could feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Welcome back to Locked on Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So do me a favor, like, subscribe, follow. Trying to get to 8,000 subscribers by a couple weeks from now. We'll see if we get there. The Buffs, and also become a Locked on Buffs insider. Get weekly film breakdowns with myself and former Colorado player Jordan Dominic, who gives you an insight on how Deion Sanders wants things. The Buffs have a big visitor coming this weekend. He's got offers from just about every program under the sun: Ohio State, Tennessee, LSU. 4-star edge rusher Emmanuel Ruffin, or defensive lineman, 6'3 and a half, 290. He's a guy that I think Colorado is trying to get these bigger recruits. They're trying to bulk up the defensive line, and this is a guy that can do just that. He was supposed to go to Mississippi State, but instead canceled it and has come to Colorado, which is a good sign for the Buffs. But he said he was initially rushing his process. It was between LSU and Ohio State. And he said he had it down to 2 schools, set a commitment date, but was moving too fast. And now he wants to see what school is the best for him. He says, a lot of teams are getting commitments, so I want to take my time and find the best place for me. Ranks as the 196th player in the country, number 21 defensive lineman, also number 12 player in the state of Alabama. So Coach Prime going back to his southern roots there. They don't have the biggest class Colorado does not, but they have some pretty notable recruits like Preston Ashley, Rodney Colton. And he says they have 200 years of experience in the NFL. The staff is about development and they know what it takes. So I'm ready to get there and help them change things. And so that's good to hear. Then they're also after a top transfer portal player. Now, you're probably wondering, like, how is a transfer portal open? You could thank Mr. Brent Pry and You could also think Mr. Deshaun Foster. Since they both got fired, there's guys who have jobs that are, there's programs who have jobs that are free. And so Virginia Tech lost a good corner. His name is Dante Lovett Jr. He's a guy that everyone in the country is after, right? Miami, Colorado. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how the Buffs fare in his recruitment. He's a junior, 6 foot, 200 pounds, out of Maryland this past year. 20 total tackles, 1 interception, 4 pass deflections, 3 pass deflections the year before. I think Colorado is going to this is a look ahead move because he's not going to play this year unless there's an academic thing that I'm not aware of. But for the most part, you can't just transfer in the middle of the year and play. I mean, granted, there's always some confusing NCAA ruling out there, but he would be more of an addition for next year. And Colorado needs to replace DJ McKinney, Preston Hodge, right? They're going to need to shore up their secondary because those guys are probably going to be NFL bound. So it's one. But I don't hate the aggressiveness from Colorado here. I don't hate looking ahead because it's never too soon to bolster your roster. And maybe there is a weird way they could get him on the team. I doubt it, and you probably don't want to thrust a guy into action. I think Colorado has a pretty decent group of corners, but you always got to be ready. And I think Colorado probably needs to put a little bit more of a focus on high school recruiting, especially with the transfer portal window being shortened to one window. And it's probably going to be very fast and may even deter guys from transferring. But I think Colorado has been pretty successful in the transfer portal. We'll see how this development works out for them. But appreciate you guys for tuning in, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. And I'll see y'all tomorrow with my predictions for the game.